Hello and welcome to another episode of What's for Dinner. If you'd like to follow along with me, go ahead and visit the link in the description down below. It'll take you to the Fire and Steel website where you can find this recipe as well as a step-by-step guide and all the ingredients that I'm using today. So this is a very simple, very straightforward recipe. It's one that I really like to make on busy work nights because you can do all the prep before and then assemble it when you finally have time to do so. So here I took some cabbage and cut it very, very thin. Next I'm going to go ahead and take this onion and slice it thin as well. You'll see this is a lot of cutting vegetables up into the appropriate sizes. The reason for that is because when we go to actually assemble this and cook everything, it just becomes a matter of putting everything in the pan at the right time, and you don't really have to go back and forth. There's not a lot of prep work. It's just cutting the vegetables. So onions sliced thin. Next we're going to go ahead and cut up some celery. This is going to be cut fairly thin. It's about 1/4 of an inch thick, and you don't have to cut it on the bias, but I think if you're cooking dinner for yourself at home, why not make it look a little bit nice? Next up is going to be some carrots. I have 2 carrots here. I didn't end up using both of them. That ended up being a little bit too much. So I'm going to just use one of these, split in half, and then cut into thin half moons. Now this should be cut quite thin because you want the carrot to cook all the way through at the very end of the cooking process. And if you cut it too thick, that may not happen. So with the carrots taken care of, we'll go ahead and turn our attention to the aromatics that we'll be putting in this dish. I'm going to be using jalapenos, ginger, and garlic. Jalapenos, I like them diced. That's a medium, smallish dice. You can cut them smaller if you don't want quite as much heat, but I like leaving them in big pieces because you get nice bursts of spiciness. For the ginger, I'm just going to go ahead and roughly cut it thin, and then I'll cross-cut that and then mince it very fine. You want the ginger to be cut up pretty small, because ginger can be very powerful, and if you bite into a really big piece of it, it can be a little unpleasant. And finally, we'll turn our attention to the garlic. I'm just slicing this thin. You could mince it, but a recipe like this, I like to just slice the garlic. It's not quite as strong when sliced like this, but then when you bite into individual pieces of it, you kind of get that burst of garlicky flavor. And it's easier too. So with all of our ingredients all prepped and ready, we can go ahead and clean up a little bit. This is a perfect time to stop. You can do this kind of before dinner, and then right before you're ready to eat, go ahead and get everything assembled. So here I have a wok. If you don't have a wok, any large skillet will do. I'm going to add in a little bit of high smoke point oil. This is grapeseed oil like I usually use. And then a little bit of sesame oil just to add a little bit more flavor. We're going to leave this over high heat until you start to see the oil just begin to smoke. We want the oil very hot. That way it imparts a lot of heat into the pan. This is especially important for me because this wok is aluminum, so it does lose temperature very quickly. And it does seem like a lot of oil, but it's all the oil that we'll be adding to this entire dish. So with the ground beef in, you just want to cook it off, keep breaking it up, keep moving it around, but really the important thing is to keep breaking it up. I want the ground beef to be completely distributed through the entire dish. And ground beef is kind of an odd choice for an Asian-inspired dish, but it's nice because it's easy to deal with. And you can see the ground beef is completely brown, it's completely broken up, and the pan has dried out. All the moisture is gone. That's when you want to move on to the next step. So when all the moisture is gone and it's just the ground beef in the pan, we'll go ahead and add in the aromatics and then quickly mix those through and then cook them for about 2 to 3 minutes. Once the garlic just begins to soften, we're going to go ahead and add in the carrots. And now the order that everything else goes in is very important, because if you add anything out of order, there's a very good chance that it may overcook. So by adding in the carrots first, they take the longest to cook. They will be okay through the entire cooking process. After the carrots have cooked down a little bit, we'll go ahead and add in the onions. And the same thing, onions take a while to cook. They're also pretty bulletproof. They're not going to overcook that easily. Next, we're going to add in all the cabbage. And this seems like a lot of cabbage, and it is a lot of cabbage. This is actually a low-carb meal. It's not going to be served with any rice. We're just going to eat it just like this. So I'm packing it full of lots of veggies to give it lots of substance. But it's also because the cabbage is that cooked down. Once this wilts down, you'll see it's not quite as much as it looks. But it is a good amount of cabbage. So here you can see it's not quite reduced by maybe half, but it's dropped down by about a third of what it was. At this point, we're going to go ahead and start adding in some of the flavors. This is a little bit of fish sauce. Be very careful. Fish sauce is very potent stuff. Next, we'll add a little bit of soy sauce, and then finally, just a little bit of sriracha. These are all going to add some foundational flavors that we're going to build on here in a little bit. And I didn't add very many of any of those, because you can always add more. It's very difficult to take away, but you can always add a little bit more. That's doubly true with the fish sauce, because as soon as you add too much, the dish is basically unsalvageable. So next up, we're going to go ahead and add in the celery. Now, celery is almost last, because celery does overcook pretty quickly. It's good up until it's not. Once celery starts to overcook, it just gets really mushy and unpleasant. So same thing, get the celery in, stir it through, let it cook, and then our final vegetable is going to be the sugar snap peas, which you want to add these in at the very, very last minute because they will overcook. They get kind of brown, green, they just look really unpleasant. In here, because there's so much other vegetable matter in here, the snap peas actually, they basically steam, which is great because it cooks them really quickly. So with all the veggies in and everything kind of cooking down, go ahead, get it all cleaned up, and then go ahead and give it a taste and check the seasoning and check the flavor. Does it need any more salt in the form of the soy sauce? Does it need any more additional flavors? And here you can see I'm kind of hemming and hawing, and I decided a little bit more fish sauce, and it's a scant bit. It's maybe half a teaspoon on top of the maybe teaspoon and a half I added earlier. And then I'm adding a good deal more soy because all those vegetables, it does need a decent amount of salt because none of them were seasoned. And then finally, the secret ingredient, the chili and the chili beef, is some Thai sweet chili sauce. It doesn't matter which brand, they all taste fairly similar. I added in not quite enough here, but again, it's good to work in stages. Very rarely should you get a dish to taste perfect on the first go. So by adding it little by little, you can keep improving. But again, if you add too much, it's going to be too saucy, it's going to be too sweet, too spicy, too whatever. So again, take a bite, take a taste. Not quite, needs a little bit more flavor. Not a whole lot though. I think I added maybe another teaspoon or tablespoon of the sweet chili sauce. And a little bit more soy, just again, bump up the salinity a little bit. So with everything done, we'll go ahead and get the pan ready for service. I'm going to take some scallions and put them on top. This is actually an important step. Scallions are a garnish, but they do add a very fresh, bright, green oniony flavor that helps balance out a lot of strong flavors in a dish like this. So scallions on top, a little bit of toasted sesame seeds just for some appearance, and they add just a scant bit of flavor. Then we'll go ahead and get this plated up. I plated it's like you can see I'm almost treating it like pasta because of those long shreds of cabbage. It ends up eating that way as well. So with that on the plate, this dish is finished. As always, I thank you for watching. Please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe for more content just like this every single week. Thank you.